core to the cloud. All right, so hello everyone. Today's session is going to be going over how to use the breakout rooms with Zoom as an instructor in course. This is kind of a part 2 to the Zoom Basics session that we've done in the past that you might have watched. If you have not watched the Zoom Basics, I recommend go ahead and pause this video, watch that one first just so you can get a better foundation. Using breakout rooms is more of an advanced function within Zoom, and so we definitely want to make sure we have kind of those fundamentals before we start experimenting a little bit more. So Quilly and I today are going to be going over not only how to use the function of breakout rooms, but kind of at the end we're going to pull it back and tie it into how to use this effectively in your course to actually teach. So like I mentioned, we're going to go over, well, why are we setting up breakout rooms in the first place? Why are they important? How do we go ahead and do it? What we're also going to do is we're going to give you the participant view, or in other words, a couple of screenshots, at least what students are going to see, so you have an idea of what their experience is going to be like as well. And then, of course, a couple of best practices as well. Unfortunately, like the other Zoom session, it's very difficult to show you Zoom while we're trying to record a video. And so it is going to be a lot of PowerPoint today with screenshots, but I promise you all of the screenshots were just taken recently. So they are the most up-to-date Zoom controls. As always, you want to make sure that you have Zoom updated before you ever go into your class. For more information on that, please feel free to reach out to the help desk. So why are we using breakout rooms? If you've noticed in Zoom in the past, it can be very difficult to facilitate maybe a smaller group discussion online virtually. In fact, it's really difficult to have more than one person talk at all in a Zoom room or any web conferencing platform for that matter. So by using breakout rooms, we can actually take what we have in the classroom. Say if we have a group of 30 students, we can split them up into groups of 5 students very easily, and then let those 6 groups go and do their own thing in a very easy format. It also allows for maybe a private conversation to occur. So maybe we're in class with students and we're going to give them 15 minutes to work on something, but kind of like how if you think about if you're teaching in person, maybe there's a quick one-on-one you need to have with the student either out in the hallway or at the front of the classroom. Obviously, again, on a video conferencing platform, that's not something you can accomplish, at least privately, but using breakout rooms, we can go into our private virtual environment and have that quick one-on-one. A couple of housekeeping items: you can split meetings into up to 50 concurrent breakout room sessions. Just because you can doesn't mean you ever will. 50 is a lot of rooms at that point. However, it is a function with our pro license of Zoom. You as the host or as the instructor in this course can go and visit all of the breakout rooms on your own at any point in time. Unfortunately, you cannot visit multiple rooms at once. Even if that was a functionality, it'd be pretty difficult to do. I would think to be able to listen in on both areas. However, you can only visit one room at a time. Before we even actually go into how to do it, there are a couple of things we'd like you to keep in mind when using breakout rooms. Only the host in a meeting can create a breakout room. Unfortunately, co-hosts are not able to do this function right now. While Zoom's indicated this might be a feature maybe later down the horizon, it's important to know that for the foreseeable future, only hosts can create breakout rooms. It is preferred to download the Zoom client for all users. However, it is mandatory for the host. And one of the things that we'll want to make sure that we do is sign in to Zoom before we even actually go ahead and get started. And if you're not sure how to do this, there are instructions in the help desk website. And if you need a little bit more assistance in doing that, that is something we would definitely be able to help you in the ORT team, and go ahead and just submit a ticket. All right, so let's dive in. How do we actually go ahead and create those breakout rooms? So using our bottom toolbar like we did before, instead of going to share screen, we're going to be going to number 9, breakout rooms. A couple of other interesting features just to keep in mind. Breakout rooms can either be forced into the students or they would have to accept the invitation. Participants can leave on their own accord. In other words, they can leave the breakout room to come back to the main session at any point in time, or you as the host can go ahead and close those rooms and bring everybody back. We can also do a couple of different features like close the rooms automatically after a certain set time. Say after 30 minutes, we want those rooms to close automatically. That is a feature that we're going to be showing you today. We can show a countdown clock if we wanted to, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And then finally, we can also do a really neat feature and broadcast the message to all of the rooms. And we'll go into more detail what that looks like. So, like I mentioned before, we're going to go ahead and click on number 9, Breakout Rooms. Once we click on Breakout Rooms, we're going to get this little pop-up. Now, right now, it's saying assign 9 participants into 3 rooms. The number here, the number 9 here, is going to update dynamically depending upon how many individuals are in your meeting, or in other words, how many participants are in your meeting. This little drop down, this number 3 here, excuse me, is a drop down box you will be able to select from. So in other words, if I want to have my 9 participants into only 2 rooms, 5 rooms, so on and so forth. So that's part 1. We select how many rooms we actually want to create. After that, we have a radio box option here, automatically and then manually. If you're going to click on automatically, what Zoom would do is take those 9 participants into the 3 rooms, and they would automatically just rearrange everybody into their own rooms. That is a great feature, and that's perfectly fine for most cases. However, there might be cases that you actually want to set those groups up manually yourself, or in other words, you want to be able to assign who goes together into what respective room. For those cases, and for our example of what we're going to be going over today, we'll choose manual. Once you select your automatic or manual option, you set the amount of rooms that you wish to create, we'll go ahead and click on this blue Create Breakout Rooms button. Once we click on that Create Breakout Rooms button, we're going to have this third screenshot here on the right. And we'll see again, it's going to be a little pop-up within our Zoom window. At the top, it says Breakout Rooms Not Started. And we see Breakout Room 1, 2, and 3, based off of those 3 rooms I just created. Now, like I mentioned before, for our example today, we're going to be manually creating our rooms. So we're going to have to assign all of the people in our meeting into their own room. And so when we're looking at this screenshot here on the right, we see there's a little button here that says Assign. So what we'll do is go ahead and click on that blue Assign button and go ahead and get started. So once we click on that Assign button, we will see the entire list of participants, or in our case, the list of students currently in our class. At which point, say if I want to take Aaron and put them into Breakout Room 1, and then put Jack in Breakout Room 2, we would just click on the blue Assign button next to each breakout room name. Make sense? And then once we have our breakout rooms created, once we start doing our assignments, we can even move people around very easily. And so we see in this third screenshot here at the bottom, if I was to hover over Aaron's name, there's a little Move To button that would appear where I'll be able to move them into, say, Jack's room. So once we've created our rooms, once we've set how many rooms we want to create, and then we do our assignments, before we actually open up the rooms to our students, let's talk about a couple of other options you can also choose from right within this main breakout room screen. Now, if we notice here at the bottom left-hand corner of this little pop-up, we have this options button with a little caret arrow pointing up. If we were to click on that options button, we have this little dialog box that appears. And going down, let's just talk about what each setting is going to do. The first one, move participants into breakout room automatically, will do kind of just what it sounds like. Like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, when we're creating breakout rooms within Zoom, there's 2 ways we can kind of get our participants into those rooms. By default, when we create our rooms and open up our rooms, all of the participants will have a little pop-up box saying Join Breakout Room. And that usually is what we want to stick with. However, for whatever reason, if there is a reason that we need to have all the participants just go to their breakout rooms automatically, we could choose this we could select this first checkoff box, at which point as soon as we opened up the rooms, it would send everybody on their way. The second option here is allow participants to return to the main session at any time. In almost all of our cases, we're going to want to go ahead and leave that checked on. And what this means is once participants were in their breakout rooms, there might be a reason that they have to come back into the main room. Maybe they have to come and ask you as the instructor a question, or maybe it's going to be one of those things where having an hour-long class. And for the first 15 minutes, I'm going to give instructions as a facilitator. We're going to send everybody off in the next 20 minutes or half hour or so in their breakout rooms. And then once they've completed that activity, we want them to come back to the main room. That way we can bring the entire class together. So for those cases, leaving this checkoff box to allow participants to return to the main session is what we're going to want to do. And don't worry, if a participant was to come back to the main session, they can still go back to their breakout rooms. Moving on, the third checkbox here, we have breakout rooms close automatically after a set amount of minutes. This is what I was speaking of before, where we could actually set a time limit to the breakout rooms when they would just close automatically and bring everybody back. And then the fourth option here is countdown after closing the breakout rooms, which kind of sounds similar than this option before, close automatically. The difference is, the difference with the countdown is if I was to close them myself, students would get a set amount of times they have, kind of a fair warning. You can choose kind of either or in these options or even both. I will tell you personally, I prefer to not have the rooms close automatically after a set amount of time. It's more of a benefit just to be able to have a countdown clock running for the meeting entirely, or maybe using the broadcast a message feature, which I'm going to speak about in a minute, say, hey, kind of 5-minute warning or 2-minute warning type of thing. But like I mentioned, it is featured within the breakout rooms. Once we are ready and we've selected all of our all of our breakout room settings that we want, the final step is going to be to click on this blue Open All Rooms button. And this is the final step to actually have students go into their breakout rooms. All of the work we've done so far is purely a setup. Once we click on that blue Open a Breakout Room button, we'll get our the little pop-up for breakout rooms is going to change to a view like you see here, where we'll see the individuals in their respective breakout rooms. At any point in time, if you wanted to join one of those breakout rooms as the instructor, you are more than welcome to by clicking on this blue Join button. What will happen once you're in, maybe if you were to jump in those breakout rooms, your screen would change to having a regular Zoom window, and at the bottom, your toolbar would look something similar to what we see here on the right-hand side. Once we've accomplished whatever it was that we want to do in that breakout room, maybe kind of a room hopping from one to the other, and we're ready to leave that breakout room, we could click on the blue Leave Room button. And just so you know, this is also the screen that students are seeing when they're in the breakout room. So theirs is going to be essentially identical to what we see here. And if, like I was saying before, if we were to allow students to come back to the main session on their own, they would be able to do that by clicking on this blue Leave Room button. And then once we were to click on the Leave Room button, we would have the option to leave the breakout room or leave the meeting entirely. You do see a third option here, End Meeting for All. This is something only you as the host would see. So going back to talking about this breakout room, so say we've created our breakout room, it's going really well, but we're ready to go ahead and close the breakout rooms and bring all of the students back to the main session. So like I was mentioning before, there's this function, a broadcast message function within the breakout rooms that the host can actually send a message to all students or all participants in their respective rooms. And so to send a breakout message, we're just going to click on this button in the bottom left-hand corner of this little breakout room pop-up screen, at which point we'll get a little text box that allows us to write whatever message we want to send, for example, 5-minute warning or 2-minute warning. And then once I were to click on the blue broadcast button, this text message would go as a kind of banner at the top of the screen to all of the breakout rooms. And then say after those 2 or 5 minutes goes by and we're ready to close all the rooms, we can go ahead and this time instead of hitting the broadcast message, we can go ahead and click the red Close All Rooms button. Once we were to click the Close All Rooms button, we'll get the students back in our session. At this point, the Zoom rooms would be closed. A frequent question we get from instructors is, can I pre-assign my breakout rooms prior to the meeting occurring? In other words, if I don't want to have to take the time during the meeting, can I actually just, maybe I already have groups set up within my class that I'm going to be using for this semester, and I want those students to go into their groups automatically. So the short answer to that is yes, kind of. It is possible. However, it does require a lot of legwork on the front end and a lot of troubleshooting with students sometimes. So first, we would have to actually enable this preference in your user settings, and this is something you can do on your own. And if it's something that you really did wish to accomplish, we could provide you those instructions on how to enable the setting in your preferences. The other couple of pieces is all students must have claimed their Rider Zoom account. And while you might be asking yourself, well, my students are already in the Zoom meetings with me, didn't they do that? Believe it or not, the answer is actually no. Just because a participant has joined your meeting does not mean they have claimed their Rider Pro Zoom license, kind of how you would have done either last semester, or maybe you worked with us during the drop-in hours at another point. As a refresher, it is not a difficult step to claim your Zoom account. However, all you have to do is go to rider.zoom.us, at which point you would be able to sign in. The students would be able to sign in with their Rider key, and their account would then be claimed. Now, those kind of three were the easiest steps out of this process. The fourth and final step is students must log into the Zoom client on their computers before having joined your session. And again, this is really where the hung up occurs and why pre-assigning breakout rooms can be so difficult, just because it is a lot of work to make sure that the students have followed through with those instructions. Like I mentioned earlier, we do have instructions on the Rider Help Desk website that you could provide students on how to log in. However, if this is something that you do anticipate or plan on doing in your class, we truly do recommend that you actually dedicate class time, if not maybe an entire session, on just making sure students have completed this process. So let's sum up what we've done so far. We've talked about why are we creating the breakout rooms in the first place, why it's important, how we can go about that. We actually went through the logistics of getting set up for our meeting. What we're going to do now is go ahead and show you what it looks like from the student participant view. All right, so let's take a look at what it looks like from the student's end. So if students were to be asked to join the meeting, in those cases earlier, as you remember, we can either have the students by default have to click on join breakout room, or it forces them automatically. But if we were to leave it on the default, this is the pop-up students are going to see on the right, join breakout room. And it's very easy, very obvious. Go ahead and click on that button. If, say, students were to join that meeting, and like I mentioned earlier, if we leave on the setting to allow students to come back to the main session, as long as the breakout rooms are still open, we can have students go back to the breakout room, and they would be able to do that by just clicking on this breakout rooms button at the bottom toolbar that would have now appeared if they're assigned a room. Breakout rooms do not record to the cloud. And this is something I meant to mention earlier as well. If we are recording our Zoom session to the cloud, unfortunately the breakout rooms will not record. While there is the option to allow a student to individually record that specific room to their local computer, no cloud recording is available. And then finally, one other topic that for the student point of view, when students are in the breakout room, or when any participant for that matter is in a breakout room, at the bottom toolbar, they're going to get an option for ask for help. And what that would do is if a student was to click on that, you as the host of the meeting would get a notification on your screen as a pop-up that says breakout room number so-and-so is asking for assistance. And right from there, there would be a button you could click to go ahead and join that breakout room. And then finally, one of the things we like to mention as a reminder, with all of the features and functions that we reviewed today, all of them are available still on the mobile application. So if a student is joining, say from their iPad or their iPhone or an Android device as an app, they can still get put into a breakout room. They can still participate fully just like they normally would. And this is something that we really want you to keep in mind going into this next semester as it's something we have been seeing as a pattern over the past couple of years. More and more students are using mobile devices, and then especially in the spring, and then what we anticipate to continue into this fall, students might not necessarily always have their own laptop device or desktop device available to them. They might be sharing with a sibling, a parent, a spouse, and just to make things get by with everything being a little bit crazy still, they might be joining from a phone. So just kind of keep that in the back of your minds that students might be joining from one of those devices. Like I mentioned, it shouldn't be a problem. All of the features and functions are available. However, it is something that we just like to give you a heads up about. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Quayle just to go over a couple of best practices for when we're actually using breakout rooms within the classroom.
Okay, so as John said, we're going to talk about a couple of best practices that will make sure that when you are using breakout rooms, that it's going to be a meaningful and efficient activity for both the instructor as well as the students. And one of the first things you want to make sure of is that you've provided a clear objective for the activity that's going to happen in the breakout room. And that goes hand in hand with making sure that the instructions for the breakout room discussion are clear. When you're in the classroom, you have the opportunity to very easily clarify questions that are coming from students like, what are we supposed to be doing again? And when you're using breakout rooms in Zoom, while you can jump into the rooms individually or send a broadcast message, it's not as easy. There are limitations on your ability to immediately clarify those kinds of questions. So one of the things that you can do is create a collaborative document that helps provide those instructions as well as keeps the group focused. And our recommendation is that you use Google Docs for that, because Google Docs is integrated for use within Canvas. Those collaborative docs can be created very easily using the collaborations tool in Canvas. And what you can do is you can create a breakout room document for each breakout room group that you're going to be creating during the session. And then in each of those documents, you would copy and paste the instructions or the questions that students are supposed to be working on. What that does is it gives each group a place where they can review that information during the session when you're not necessarily available to clarify or answer those questions. Another great use of that Google Doc is that it gives you a place to kind of track the activity that's going on in that individual breakout room without having to be in the session with them. So in addition to giving them the instructions, if you ask each student in the group to act as the note taker, you are able to kind of track what's going on. You know whether they've made it through those questions and are wrapping up and ready to be brought back to the group, or if they need a little bit more time. What you can do then is, if you can see that all of the groups are just about done, you can give that 2-minute warning or 5-minute warning using that broadcast message option, which lets them know that time is almost up. So you don't run into the situation where you have students who are finished and are waiting around for 10 minutes to come back to the main room, or you have that group that's working a little slower and they're kind of annoyed because you've announced a 2-minute warning before they've had time to work through that information. Again, practice setting this up, get a group of colleagues together, set up those collaborative docs, practice opening those tabs and moving people into breakout rooms so that when you're ready to do this with students, it doesn't feel like the first time and you're a little bit more comfortable.
And then finally, just to kind of summarize really quick, we know what we've covered was a very dense topic and we did it in a relatively quick pace. And so it's normal if you do have a couple of outstanding questions that you'd like to talk through a little bit more, or maybe just kind of pick our brains on how to best do this for what you're trying to accomplish in your class. And if you do have those questions, please feel free to come to our virtual drop-in hours. At the time of this recording, the cadence for these are Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 to 3:30 p.m., as well as Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. While we have not finalized the time cadence moving forward into the fall, it is a promise that we are making to you guys. We will be available. We're just not positive these are going to be the days and times yet. We want to see when faculty demand is the most. That way we can meet that demand. But for now, or at least for the next week or so, a week or two, these are still the dates. The meeting ID is here at the bottom. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to drop into those drop-in hours and ask. And with that, that was using the Zoom breakout rooms function. We're really excited to see what you guys are going to be doing with this great tool and look forward to an awesome semester.